y'all. Welcome back to Bowls with the Bard. My name is Cakes. I am your host. Today, we are continuing our conversation about problem plays with a discussion about Timon of Athens. Timon is considered a problem play for a plethora of reasons, but if you look it up on the good old interwebs, the two reasons that come up most frequently are that it is seemingly unfinished, which makes it a little more difficult to put it up on a stage, and that it is hard to kind of figure out what genre it belongs to. People like to say tragedy, but it doesn't always fully fit there. So yeah, that's kind of our introduction to Timon as a problem play. With us here today, we have two guests to talk about the play. I am so excited to have both of them on the show. Our first guest is Jeff Miller. Jeff, do you want to tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself?
Sure. In addition to being a massive Shakespeare nerd and fan, I am also a professional wrestling trainee, and general actor, director, educator throughout the state of Maryland.
Sweet. All right. And then our second guest is Elizabeth Ung. Liz, do you want to tell our friends at home about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. My name is Liz. I did a lot of work throughout the DMV area, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, which is on the Piscataway Conoy and Susquehannock lands. And I worked as an actor, writer, director. I still am. And right now I'm in Oahu, Hawaii, doing my grad school degree for some reason. But it's really fun. I'm really learning a lot here. I have an interesting relationship with Shakespeare. In that I've acted in it, I've directed a few productions. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about Timon. It's like my most favorite play of Shakespeare, which is interesting. People always give me some interesting looks when I say that, but I'm excited to talk about this.
Sweet. Yeah, no, definitely not very many people's favorite play, but I've warmed up to it a little bit recently, so I'm excited to talk about it with both of y'all. Before we get into it, I'm gonna get a little high. I don't know if y'all brought any
Have a
good
bubble
stuff.
tea.
Yes, bubble tea.
Oh, yeah. Um,
Sweet.
I just gulp my coffee. I'll just have water.
Hell
I've
yeah.
like 3 hours, so
We love water. All right, y'all, we are back. I am nice and high. My friends here are nice and hydrated.
yes.
And we are we are ready to talk about Timon of Athens. And I feel like the first big hurdle with this play is that it's one of those Shakespeare plays that nobody has ever even heard of. They don't know it exists. So my first question is, how do you get people to come and see a Shakespeare play that they have never even heard of? Jeff, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, isn't that always the thing, right? You gotta really put yourself out there with some of these plays. And I think with this play in particular, you kind of have to sell Timon, right? In this situation is like this is the powerhouse actor that we have in this role. It's a great role. And come out and see. And then also, kind of whatever it is that you're doing with it, um, like that's kind of the story that you have to tell in your marketing, as opposed to being able to kind of coast on name recognition. The marketing team has to do some heavy lifting,
Yeah.
working with the creative team, but I think it's very doable. I mean, if you treat it like you would a new work, it's about making sure you get a clear story out there of what it is that you're trying to say.
Cool. Liz, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. A lot of the points you're making. Yeah, the marketing team definitely has to like not just rely on like a well-known actor. And I was going to go into this a little bit. Seeing the Shakespeare Theater Company production of Timon right before the pandemic was yeah, like Catherine Hunter was just like so great in that role. I think even embracing it as a problem play, like kind of taking the edgy route, I think might like help, depending on your production. I feel like, yeah, let's embrace that, this is a problem play. Like nobody's perfect. These are human beings on stage. They're gonna make mistakes. And even even the structure of this play, from the surface level, I think people are just afraid to tackle it, and because the first half and the second half just juxtapose each other, in terms of like the mood and like even character. But I feel like embracing that kind of maybe will intrigue people. And also, I think making it relevant, and I'm a big advocate too of like localizing a play, right? And finding ways to adapt it to the community that you're reaching out to, is really important. And I know a lot of like Shakespeare purists out there are like, don't cut this play, or like, don't like, try to like chop it up and like, paste it. But like, I feel like that is like, that's how you engage a modern audience. And especially if you want to diversify your audience, if you want to bring in new eyes and new engagement, you gotta like you gotta adapt it, you gotta cut it up a little bit. And I definitely think if putting it up on a production, it definitely needs some cutting, but you definitely want that community outreach with it, making it like localizing it and really casting like certain people of demographics, and certain people that are well known also throughout the community, but that also speak to even current events, that even speak to a certain social issue, because this time is full of a lot of social commentary, really embracing that aspect of it. So yeah, I think this has to be something that is relevant, that is contemporary, and that is new too in a way. And I think people will come to see like, oh, a new Shakespeare play we've never seen.
Awesome. I love that. I feel like in the macro, that's kind of what we need to do to get people to come to the theater in general, is like connect it back to the community that theater is serving in the first place. So I think that's a great way to get people to come and see this play. So now that we've got them in the theater, how do we get them to stay? Because this is the one play that I have ever left in the middle of the play. Like, I'm not going to say what theater it was at because I generally like their work. But in the middle of the second act, I left this play because I was like, oh, this just feels like indulgent Shakespeare and I don't love it. So how do we tackle the second half of this play to keep people engaged? Liz, I'll hand it over to you first.
Wow. Well, leaving in the middle, I really only have seen one production of Timon. But I think speaking as like a director or even like as a designer, you gotta have like a strong weaving of themes and talking about like the juxtaposition of even location and the 180 turn that Timon takes. There has to be like a through line that connects like what is Timon in the beginning versus how they are at the end. And so you gotta like somehow pull that in. And I feel like you would cut it off when Timon does officially denounce humanity. And I remember the Shakespeare theater production, it was literally like she burned down the house, and I was like, whoa, she like burned, like that in itself is like such a strong statement. So I feel like having you definitely also have to have some spectacle, but if you're building up Timon as somebody that has a certain charisma or attraction, and then seeing them crumble, I feel like people would want to stay to kind of see like, why do they turn that way? Why is it that they or like, what are they going to become at the end? I mean, yeah, it's going to depend on the production. It's going to depend on like, how director kind of will create that and formulate that into an intriguing second act. It's like always that cliffhanger that's got to be, just right. Yeah, and I think that visually, if we're talking about, oh thou well, let me look upon thee. There's got to be like a wall that like opens up and we're in a different place. So again, teasing that audience or like kind of making the audience be like, oh, like now we're technically in a different play now. And I feel like, that might turn some people off, but using that sort of shock value or like that avant-gardeness of like, okay, we're just gonna be in a different area now, I think might attract people. I think very much design wise and spectacle wise, might also help blend people in. But yeah, again, it also depends on your actor playing Timon as well. And I talked about again the sort of really strong choice of having Timon as somebody likable, right? As somebody that you is not naive, but is like this optimistic person about humanity at first. It's the person that we all want to be. It's the person that we also find ourselves attracted to because they have such a almost pure view of humanity, almost sort of like this is a reciprocal relationship we're establishing with each other, like as human beings, as society. And I feel like we want that idealism in our lives, and we want the world to work that way. And then we see the exploitation of that and realize, oh man, like we know this is going to turn bad because of all these people just abusing this reciprocal relationship. And so then I feel like in that character, Timon will have to, that actor will have to find a way of not just like turning it completely into hatred for humanity, but this sort of heartbreak and then the process of grief, right? Those processes of grief will help, I think will help keep engaging the audience. And the rest of the play is like that whole it's in the woods, but if done really carefully and if it's done in a very calculated way, you can see this process of grief, and we can see this sort of catharsis of Timon becoming somebody that even if denouncing humanity at first, it solidifies at the end. So yeah, you just got to go strong with it.
I resonate a lot with both of those things as someone who walked out of a production, because I feel like you're right, the like juxtaposition of both of the kind of worlds of the two different acts, it has to be strong. In the production I left, they had all of this crazy tech stuff in the first act. Like they had this big giant LED screen that like introduced characters with their like pictures coming across the screen, like as they would walk on. Like it was grand and amazing. And then in the second half, they stripped the stage of everything and there was just nothing there. And I didn't know where we went. And that made it very difficult for me to engage with what was going on. And then the second thing that made it hard for me to engage with what was going on was that the actor felt like they were indulgent about how they were acting the role. Like it felt like, look at me acting like I'm crazy, instead of finding the humanity in that character.
Yeah.
So yeah, like both of the things that you just said, that strikes me as correct. I think I've seen similar production to the one that you saw at STC, but it was the Royal Shakespeare.
Royal Shakespeare, yeah.
It was their version of the same production, and I feel like they did what you just talked about so much better. Like there was like a trash heap that felt like kind of like a homeless camp almost in the second act, as compared to like the first act that had a lot of like table imagery going on. I felt for that Timon. So I cared in that second act enough to continue watching. So Jeff, do you have anything to add about the second half of this play?
Yeah, absolutely. So, full disclosure, I directed a production of Timon of Athens back in the summer of 2011. And so I was confronted with a lot of these issues. So the way that I approached it, the staging that I used was the space we were in was kind of this old building that had a lot of sort of Art Deco design to it. So I had it as a movable production with different scenes taking places in the different rooms of the building. And then for the second half of the play, I had the audience literally leave the building and sit on the outside of the building with this kind of ruined side of the building where Timon was literally outside and couldn't get back in to the party, right? That was going on the inside. So having that sort of very physical change in location, I thought was particularly useful. Secondly, I did a lot of what you had described, Liz, of I rearranged some of the scenes in the second act to tell a certain narrative regarding Timon's friends that I thought sort of helped that story flow a little bit better. But I think that's, to me, is part of the key to the second half of the play, is if you let the entire thing be about Timon, then there's nowhere to go, because he doesn't change after, like, once he's there, once he's like discarded the humanity, that's kind of where he is, right? And he's he's discovering the misanthropic thing, but it's the reflection of his relationship to those people that he used to have a relationship with, where we can see where those differences come in, right? It's, whether it's Apemantus or Flavius or Alcibiades, right? The painter and the poet, having each of these characters sort of come back in, we kind of use each of them as kind of a measuring stick for where Timon is at that moment, right? And if your Timon is too big, as you kind of described there, Michaela, where it becomes the Timon show and they kind of wipe out the other actors on the stage, then it's, as you described it, there's nowhere to go, right? It's just 45 minutes to an hour of an actor ranting about humanity, and that's just not, there's no change. It's not interesting to watch. So yeah, it's, as you described, Liz, it's how do we see the humanity? How do we see how far they've fallen? And I think that comes in the reactions of the other people coming in of, oh wow, this is not the person that we knew and loved.
Yeah, I vibe with that. Like,
yeah. It's the communal reciprocity that Timon established, and when that stops, I feel like everyone else tries to give back as well, or take back, or find what is this balance again. And I agree that especially the relationship with Apemantus is so Apemantus. I don't know. I see whatever. Apemantus. The way that Apemantus comes in, is that relationship is so strong. It can be this very even, I would even say, parental relationship that they have. And for Apemantus to kind of see, I feel like a child of the world, a child they helped raise, or they help know the knowledge of the world, it's become tainted. And I think the play then speaks about the failures that we have about, and this is kind of, a production that I want to do, but we see a failure of a community, a failure of a village becoming, it kind of embodied in who Timon is. So yeah, I think, it is definitely not just about Timon, for sure. It's everybody around them.
Huh. Yeah. Well, you just brought up a character that I love, I love Apemantus so much. He, they rock. I feel like I've only ever seen them played by a woman, but I don't think they're written as a woman. So Apemantus, they rock. They're a great character, and I feel like they very frequently say kind of what the audience is thinking as this story is going on. And I feel like that can be both a good and a bad thing, because it's fun to have a character like that as an audience member that you can really like sink your teeth into and love following the story with. But it's difficult because I feel like Apemantus has the power to turn the audience against Timon a little bit. And if your Apemantus is too good, that could ruin the second act of the show. So, like, how do we allow the audience to savor in Apemantus, but not have our audience find Timon to be like stupid or naive and not connect with Timon at all? Jeff, do you want to start?
Yeah. I think for me, you have to establish with the sort of needling that goes on between the shade that Apemantus is throwing, that it comes from a place of love, right? It has to come from a place of I want you to be better, right? Like you're not seeing what the world is, and it's going to hurt you, and I need to help you see that, so that what happens doesn't happen, right? It's like that's the way that Apemantus knows how to communicate. The way that I staged it in the production I worked on was conceptually the story was set in the 20s, and Timon was a Gatsby-esque figure, and Apemantus was lower class, like presumably homeless, right? Had lost a lot of money, or had felt more at home among the lower class, and yet was friends with, like, he's a writer, so he's allowed to associate with Timon and these upper class individuals, but he's not from that. Like he understands kind of how the world really is, and how he sees it. And then once Timon falls kind of to Apemantus's level, it's like, well, I tried to tell you how it is, and so Timon's trying to do the Apemantus thing of like, you taught me to rail on humanity, and now I'm going to do it. But Apemantus is like, not like this. Right? This is not what I meant. I think you're taking it too far. But I think by that point, Timon's kind of too far gone with it to really be able to hear what Apemantus is saying, which I think is really tragic, right? Is that, like, in all of that, all Apemantus wanted to do was help. And now that the worst has come and he's trying to help, it's like his brand of helping is not going to do it, right? It's not going to help solve Timon's problems, and so he has to leave them.
So sad. Liz, do you have anything you would like to add about that?
No, yeah, and again, I agree with like how Jeff approached that, and I think if making it specific, right, and if making this production specific, there is this, like, if Apemantus is like an older person of society, I feel like this could easily be about like the ways that intergenerational trauma still persists, and I feel like even for Timon, if again casting it in a certain way, if Timon was this exception, like this sort of exceptional person in society, in my in my dream production, Timon is like a woman of color, is somebody who's from like this marginalized group, who's made it to the top, who's kind of done this rags to riches thing, and Apemantus is sort of the elder of this marginalized community, kind of being like in check with like this younger generation. And so that kind of brings this jaded cynicism into Apemantus's character as like, come on, like, don't be this naive. Like, this is exactly what this dominant society wants you to think and wants you to do. And, we can comment all day on like the capitalism politics and the kind of late stage capitalism of this play, even so. But I think that with then seeing that turn in Timon after denouncing humanity, it is a heartbreak then for Apemantis to see that, because they've tried to get it to Timon's head. They've tried to, because of course they want Timon to succeed. They want Timon to be this better person, to help this community, to help the community they're from and they're living in. But then to kind of find these shaky foundations just be knocked down by the betrayal of like these friendships. I think for Apemantis, it's heartbreaking, and I think for an older generation to see like the younger generation kind of be brought into their perspective of cynicism, their perspective of being jaded. Yeah, it's something like in your face and heartbreaking. And so for Apemantis, I think, it's kind of like, ooh, this has gone a little too far. Like, not like don't do it like this, but like it's complicated, I think, too, just in the way that we have expectations of people, and we project a lot of what we want on them, what we hope that they represent a certain aspect of our community in a way, and then to have that fall is like, particularly like, oh, like maybe we should raise people to a pedestal, one monolith, one person to be the monolith. And it just is really sad that way, to kind of then see somebody with so much potential just fall, just kind of be that fragile. And you wonder if it's not their personality, but it's the community. It's the community that helps build that person and to make them be somebody with the potential to lead, the potential to support this community.
Huh. I really love the specificity of that, and I also love that, like, when you zoom out and you look at it from like a more broad perspective, it does seem like the most important aspect of Apemantis's character is like having care for Timon implemented, and that's really beautiful.
He reminds me in a lot of, or they remind me in a lot of ways of Lear's Fool. Is that Lear's Fool can't just be, I don't like Lear, so I'm gonna throw barbs. It's got to be, I pity you, right? It's I need to help you, and this is the way that I know how to help you, right?
Yeah. From the position that I am given, it is kind of the only way I can. Very interesting. All right. Well, we've got a couple of questions left. Before I do the big kind of more general one, I'll do a more specific one that Jeff has requested to have asked. Jeff, who do you think this play is about?
Okay, so the obvious answer is it's about Timon, but if you ask me who I think the heart of the play is, I think it's Flavius. I think that because Timon is this kind of larger than life figure within this story, to have that person from the outside that we get to view him with, it allows us to really kind of personalize and track what Timon is going through, right, in a really interesting way. And just Flavius is one of my favorite characters in Shakespeare. He's just so pure and so good, and like really has such a care for Timon, and that we see by the end of the play. And that's actually one of the main things that I changed in my rearrangement of the scenes in the second half of this play, is that I put Flavius's scene with Timon last, is as the last moment that we see Timon before he goes, that he has that last sort of connection with his friend and tells him, go on, get out of here, like, don't stay with me. I'm gonna pull you under with me if you stay. So it's for me, rather than leaving it on a sad note of like, oh, everything was, he's been totally corrupted and ruined. Timon he has this moment at the end of like, yes, I've done all the, everything has been terrible for me, but let me at least make it better for you. Like, let me have one moment of, if there's nobody else in humanity, right? I've shunned all of my other old friends, all the other people I've interacted with, but there's one person in humanity that I still have feelings about and can still have hope for, and it's you. And I think that gives us a little something, a little bit of hope to end the play on. And even if that's not necessarily the way that Shakespeare intended the journey of it to go, I think for the story that I wanted to tell, the other part with Flavius was, in the movable production, Flavius was the one taking us from room to room as sort of the audience avatar. So being able to kind of follow him all the way to the end. He was the the character Nick. It's been a while since I've read Gatsby. He's the author, right? He's the narrator that we kind of follow and get to see Gatsby / Timon through his eyes as this is all happening. So if you ask me, it's about Timon, but what's interesting to me is, as I mentioned, the other characters and the impact that Timon has on each of their lives, and sort of how everybody reflects everybody in the end.
Huh. I love that. I know it's sort of a curveball question, Liz, because you didn't prep for it, but do you have anything else that you want to add to that?
No, I think Flavius is like a very I say Flavius, by the way.
No, please. I don't know. I'm not the arbiter on pronunciations.
I hear so many that's the other thing, is like I hear so many different pronunciations. Just like whatever, like Timon of Athens and like anyway, no, in this I think Flavius, again, talking about like a dream production I want to do. Flavius also has to like carefully casting like all these characters, right, of different backgrounds, of like even their identity. I feel like Flavius is also maybe the same background or the similar lived experience of Timon, like in terms of like their identity, their ethnicity, or whatever. But it's in a way that they sort of also idealize and look up to Timon as this beacon of like they want them also to do well. I think Flavius also then realizes a lot of these things, but again doesn't really do. I don't think they get to Timon as strongly, or like it's not as the actions they take doesn't reach Timon, and it's also sort of a heartbreak there, where they're maybe even younger than of course they're maybe even younger than Timon, and it is this maybe they're Gen Z, right? Or like Timon is this millennial and Apamantis is the boomer or something like that. But like we have this like age difference and this sort of generational thing happening with the sort of themes that they try to overcome. So yeah, I definitely can buy that. Flavius is the audience in a way as well, just wanting to be a bit of this a bit more optimistic than Apamantis, obviously, but I think Flavius we can find this focus where we see maybe the world through Flavius's eyes in a way. So
yeah, it's almost like Apamantis is able to successfully get through to Timon in a way that has Timon emulate Apamantis's behavior, but if that had happened with Flavius instead, like the outcome might have been better. It's like Flavius is like, you're so right, Jeff, like so pure, so lovely, but he doesn't get listened to at the beginning of the play. And that's like, maybe if Timon had started listening a little earlier to that character, we'd be good. So my last question that I have for the both of you is kind of a double question, which is like, what does a terrible production of this play look like? And what does an excellent, like, gold standard production look like? As we attempt to produce this problem play in the future.
I'm gonna let Liz go first because I need to go get the door, but
okay.
I will be right back.
Cool.
I don't know, like, taste is subjective, so what might be bad for one may be great for another, honestly. I actually talked with like an acquaintance about like the same STC production. They did not like it, and I was like, why not? And like, they made some kind of good points about it. I guess if we're talking about maybe standards, a bad production maybe would be keeping all the text. I don't know, like not messing with it and just being like, straight up, let's just do it the way that's written on paper. It's gonna be, I feel like, like that, and also the way that Timon is portrayed in the second half. Yeah, I think if you're very much like, I'm mad the whole fucking time, then people are gonna be turned off. Playing Timon as one note at the end. I don't know. Like, again, it's subjective. I haven't personally seen a bad production. I've heard about bad productions, but I feel like it goes with any Shakespeare play, honestly, is just not really kind of vitalizing the play in a way that people can relate to, or like in a way that is not like gonna be reinventing the wheel. Like, we never want to do that either, but in a way that speaks to current events, or that speaks to ways that gives voices and uplifts voices to certain marginalized communities as well. So it's again, like, I don't know specifically what would make it bad. In the many ways, obviously, but I don't know. Taste is subjective, I guess.
I think that's a fair answer. As I was prepping for this episode, I was looking up the play, and a review for the production that I walked out of popped up, and it was like, such and such theater breathes life into problem play. So like, that reviewer loved that production, and I could not sit through it. So I agree, taste was definitely subjective. Jeff, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the worst thing that you can do with this play is hate it. Going in. If you go in and you decide that no, it's there, I can't fit, like, there's nothing I can do, it's a bad play, I just have to go through it, right? And thinking it's just about the first half, you're gonna run into like, oh, I'm only interested in the first half of this play. Well, there's a whole second part of the play you still have to, like, unless you just end the play there, which you have a right to do, but if you're going to do the whole thing, you need to care about it, right? And you need to have a reason for it to go to the end. Whereas I think thinking of it as a challenge, right? What are the things that are wrong, right? That's kind of how I approached it as a director, was what are the problems with it and how do I present those as opportunities? It doesn't feel like we get a complete picture. Great. Let's not give the audience a complete picture. Let's let them choose their own adventure with what scene they want to go see. And let's have them eavesdrop on a conversation so they don't get the whole conversation. it feels unfinished. Great. Then let's, cut and paste and rearrange and tell the story that we want to tell with it, right? And not be precious the language and the precious with the story, and understand that if you're producing it, it's an opportunity to tell the story that you want to tell, and it's the words are tools, and the characters are tools that you use to tell your story, that you don't have to be beholden to what old 400-year white man said when he discarded this play to go write King
Nicole
Lear.
Is just Shakespeare that wrote this.
Yeah, and it's not. It's also Middleton, right? Or
yeah.
right, and it's like, okay, yeah, he probably why do we have to be precious about it when clearly Shakespeare wasn't all that precious about it? So yeah, that's my answer, is don't be precious about it, tell your story with it, and then it'll be a production that you want to go see.
Amen. Bulls with the Bard is all about fucking with Shakespeare, so I love that answer. Awesome. I am so glad the two of y'all did this. Do either of you have any finishing thoughts you would like to add before we wrap things up?
I would like to be cast in this. Someone's doing a show. It is a dream project of mine. It is a dream production of Shakespeare of mine. And again, this is the hill I will die on, I guess. In terms of this being a favorite of mine, because it is complex, because it's not easy. I feel like people are like, let's do Romeo and Juliet because it's easy, let's do Hamlet because it's easy, because it's been done a lot. And I feel like for me, artistically, I would feel more accomplished tackling this play, and doing this play in some form or another, whether it's directing or acting in it. I think it is it is something that I feel we want to communicate, and I feel like this play has yet to reach maybe a sort of and I'm not trying to make it mainstream either, but in a way that we're able to connect with it more. We're able to find more reasons to kind of look at it differently and find different perspectives and persuade people this is one way of looking at it. If we are a contemporary audience in 2023, this is the way that we want to we want to show perspective. And I feel like that communication of this play to an audience, to anyone working on a production, is something I think I'm happy to help tackle and challenge. And doing an easy play, it's great for to turn your brain off a little bit, but doing something that challenges you, that is challenging but also artistically fulfilling, is always a dream project that I hope to do one day. So it's my spiel.
Yeah, I love the play, would definitely work on it again. I think spending a lot of time with this play has really given me a deep appreciation for all of the problem plays, that I'm so much more interested in how do we it feels so much more doable to take one of these plays and to turn it into a story that we want to tell, rather than taking a well-known story and sort of shoehorning it into a particular way of doing things, right? Like Hamlet on the moon. I think there's the ability to be less precious, and more adaptable, and it's kind of a fable, really, like the story of Timon, and I think that gives it a really great universal quality to it, of Timon could be any marginalized person that's trying to fit in the dominant culture, right? And that speaks to anybody that has those feelings of marginalization. And so I think that I would love to see more productions of it, telling all these different kinds of stories that I would love to hear.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why I was so excited to talk to both of you about it today, was like, as I read it for the first time in years a couple of weeks ago and then watched the RSC production, I kept having moments of like, wow, this is really the perfect play for late stage capitalism. Like we are living in the dystopia that this play presents the possibility of, and I would love to see more people tackle it and see what people can say with it, because the one production of it that I've seen that I liked, I loved. I was like enthralled by that production. So yeah, I hope this conversation inspires some artists to pick it up and put it up on a stage. Thank you both so much for being on the show. Ooh, Liz, you have something else.
I forgot to plug. I'm also not on topic of Timon, but another
That's okay.
production. I'm not sure if you want to copy paste this somewhere in the video, but I'm also a co-playwright on a Romeo and Juliet adaptation called R/J at the Strand Theater Company in Baltimore. We are presenting a new retelling of actually my least favorite Shakespeare play, Romeo and Juliet. It features a fat Juliet and a transgender man, Romeo, and it'll be really exciting. It's going to premiere in the summer, and I'm co-playwriting that and collaborating with wonderful queer artists on that production. So yeah, that's also what I'm working on as well. I just wanted to give a shout out to that because it's important.
Fuck yeah, thank you for doing that. I saw the marketing for that production come out in the last couple of weeks. It looks banging. It's killing me that I'm going to be across the country. Maybe I'll have to make a little trip.
I'm not able to see it either, which is like
no.
really sad. Yeah.
That sucks.
Check it out if you're in Baltimore in June 2023.
Jeff, do you have maybe a kind of sort of problem play you would like to pitch?
I mean,
as well.
Henry VIII happening at Baltimore Shakespeare Factory. It's going to be very eclectic in terms of time period. My design inspiration for the show is Bridgerton. So if you're a Bridgerton fan, come out and see this one. It's funny. I think it's irreverent. It features badass women, in some of the best written women in all of the Shakespeare canon. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. It's going to be at St. Mark's in Baltimore. Check it out April 14th through the 30th.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure that I link to both of those productions in the show notes. Y'all, thank you so much for being on the show. Y'all are good friends of the podcast. I love both of you so much. And I was so happy that the two of you volunteered to do this play, because I was terrified nobody was going to want to talk about this play with me. I have had such a great time talking with both of y'all. I know we will be back next week, but this is the first play that we have recorded an episode for this season, and I don't know what the order of the plays is gonna be, so we'll be back with an episode, but I don't know what we're talking about. Thanks y'all for joining, and I'll see you next week. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can follow Jeff, Liz, and Bowls with the Bard at the handles either on your screen or in the description. If this is your first time listening to Bowls with the Bard and you liked what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe. It helps the podcast to grow. And tune in next week as we dig into Measure for Measure with Joan Rob Wilson and Dylan Greenberg. Until then, bye y'all.
1,000 sighs to save, oh, lover, never find my grave to weep there.